back viewers, welcome back to this course on sustainable development and ESD and sustainable education. So, last class we were discussing about transformative learning, what should be the pedagogy of transformative learning, etc. So, today we will discuss about a model of sustainable education. So, how our education system can be more sustainable with a sustainability approach. Let us see. Now, for example, developing the conceptual model of transformative learning for the Indian higher education system. So, this model actually taking into account these sustainability paradigms, triple bottom line model. Now, I have developed this kind of model for Indian education system. Now, we will explain it what this model says about, conveys. Now, here like in sustainability triangle, that is the people, planet and prosperity, profit. So, here how we have divided these three circles, three dimensions, three drivers here in the framework of sustainable education. As you can see, let us see this is one driver 1. This is driver 1, that is the which comes under the profit, that is the economy of this economical driver. So, here we can say the profit or the prosperity is that, yes, of course, in education system it is about the education policy, educational finance, educational schemes, all kinds of all the governing bodies, statutory bodies like UGC, CBSE, NCRT, all kinds of things. So, it is related to more towards the education policy, that is the Department of Education, central government. So, here we have kept it as the economic driver 1. So, that is the, because it decides, the central government decides the education policy and the finance and the budget allocation, all kinds of things. So, that is here our driver 1 is the Ministry of Education, that is now it is Ministry of Education, earlier it was Ministry of HRD. So, education policy and all related budget allocation, all things, that is the driver 1. Then the second driver is yes, of course, the people driver 2, that is the social aspect, that is the people. So, human resource in education system, the human resource, that the people who are the stakeholders, direct, indirect, major, minor stakeholders, that comes under the driver 2. Okay, that is the driver 2, that is people. Then third is that ecosystem, that is environment is another driver. So, here we have said that educational ecosystem, that is the driver 3, that is the planet of our education system, that is the environment. So, here these 3 drivers are there. Now, let us see how it functions, how it interacts with each other, how it correlates, etc. So, here every driver has an interaction with the other driver, like driver 1 and driver 2, they interact with each other. So, here when the interactions between driver 1 and 2, that is the economic policy and budget allocation, etc., with the educational, with the human resource, that enhances, that decides the quality. So, with their interactions, now we have to ensure that this output, the product of these 2 drivers interactions, that should enhance the quality of education. So, here our emphasis on the enhancing the quality of education. Okay. Similarly, second driver 2 and driver 3, that is, one is the human resource capacity, abilities, and the ecosystem, educational ecosystem, that is the environment. So, when they interact with each other, reciprocate with each other, so then the outcome should be feasible. That means, we look into the feasibility, possibility of maintaining that healthy relationship, maintaining that interactions, maintaining that reciprocation as the more productive and qualitative. So, feasibility, here comes about the feasibility aspect. So, then again third driver 1 and 3, here again driver 1 and 3, when we see its interactions, that is the ecosystem, environmental, educational ecosystem, infrastructures, everything depends on, again, as per the direction of policy implementation of Ministry of Education, as well as the budget allocation. Hence, the interaction between this 1 and 3 driver, it should be viable, it should be socially viable, economically viable, financially viable. Okay. So, here we look into the these 2 drivers interactions as the viability of whatever policies that we are implementing, and the budget allocation with that that resources. Now, we are being able to develop a healthy educational ecosystem environment for our system. So, that is here the viability. So, these interactions of these 1 and 3 drivers should be viable, and interaction between 1 and 2 driver, that should enhance the quality of our education. And then interaction between driver 2 and 3, that should be feasible, that it should be feasible to operate, to function, to work together, to work in a very positive way, conducive way, so that our outcome will be very positive. So, here all in this triangle, as you can say, when driver 1, 2 and 3. So, when they interact effectively and their interaction is very positive and productive. So, here it is also viable, it is also maintains quality and it is also feasible. Then the outcome, then the outcome can be the sustainable education. So, here of course, when the driver 1 and 2, when they interact, there will be some conflicts, there will be some issues, there will be some challenges, there will be some dilemmas, but how to resolve it, that is one dimension. Similarly, when driver 2 human resource interact with the educational ecosystem, there may be some issues, there may be some dilemmas, some confusion, some conflicts, etc. So, but that has to be sorted out again. So, and again similarly, driver 1 and driver 3, that is policy implementations of budget allocation with the educational environment. So, when they interact and we try to ensure the viability of this system, but again there may also come so many challenges, issues, conflicts and dilemmas, but how to be sorted it out. So, when these conflicts and dilemmas are sorted out, then when these things function smoothly, interact smoothly, reciprocate smoothly, then our sustainable education happens. Now, let us explain it further. Now, as you can see, driver 1, 2 and 3. So, okay. So, when as we have already discussed, when driver 1 interact with driver 2, there may be some conflicts and issues. So, here we have to set the objective very strategically. For example, here the focus of driver 1. Here the focus of driver 1 is that is the driver 1, that is policy and allocation, budget allocation, that is ensuring the learning outcomes through effective curriculum, pedagogy, then assessment and technology. So, here definitely with education policy, these facilities, these are also being prescribed in the policy in clear detailed way. So, here the focus of driver 1, as you can see, that is ensuring the learning outcomes through effective curriculum, how the curriculum has to be updated, the curriculum should be framed looking into the holistic development, all round development, harmonious development of the stakeholders, especially students and the teachers. Then pedagogy, what should be the appropriate pedagogy. Now, in this online pedagogy, this online classrooms, digital platform, again we have to look into that, how in online platform what should be the pedagogy, how to engage the students, how to assess and evaluate their performances. So, and how now technology in this online context, technology plays a very important role, vital role. So, now new updated technologies have come up. So, how to use it, utilize it properly. So, here in this context, as the educational environment, learning environment changes, so the role of curriculum, pedagogy and also technology are also changing. So, the focus of driver 1, that is decides that through effective use of curriculum, updated curriculum, research based pedagogy, effective pedagogy. So, as we have discussed about the transformative learning, so we can adopt the transformative learning pedagogy. Assessment evaluation, how in the online platform, how we can assess the students' performance and abilities, not through pen paper test, but through other methods, assignments, projects, etc. And technology, how extensively we can use technology. Nowadays, all this Google Meet, Zoom or WebEx, all kinds of technology, so are playing role, active role. So, this is the this objective 1 is the focus of these objectives are the focus of driver 1. Okay. Now, let us see the driver 2. What driver 2 focuses? The enhancing the educational human resource. Who are the human resource? Like students are the human resource, teachers are the human resource, others administrative staff, supporting staff of the education environment, they are the human resource. And again also from time to time parents and community people are directly or indirectly related to the school education system. So, they are also the secondary stakeholders. So, enhancing the educational human resource competencies, that is both the teachers, students and supporting staff through training and practice. So, for the teacher training, so therefore enhancing the capacity of teachers, human resources and ability. So, teacher trainings are there. Now, it is mandatory teacher training, continuous lifelong teacher training, in-service training, pre-service training. So, different kinds of professional development trainings are there. So, for them to enhance the competencies of teachers from time to time and updating them regarding the latest research, pedagogy and technology. Okay. Similarly, students are also being engaged, and similarly from time to time supporting staff, our administrative staff, our supporting staff, they are also be and they are also to be trained from time to time regarding the regarding the latest not only the technical skill and the official or the administrative skills, but also in soft skills, in the behavioral, in the nowadays in pandemic also, to give some kind of training for de-stressing themselves, some kind of communication skills, some kind of interpersonal healthy relationship skills. So, these kind of things can be given through from time to time. That is the objective of driver 2, how to enhance the capacity of the human resources who are directly or indirectly related to education system. Okay. Then the next driver 3, now the driver 3 is here. So, here so when we are saying that driver 3, it has the objective or the focus on strengthening the educational ecosystem through good infrastructure and technology access. Okay. So, definitely, so unless and until we have the sufficient infrastructure, enough infrastructure and this environment, updated technology, so we cannot make use of it for curriculum transaction, especially now this pandemic has given us a lesson. Now, how to manage ourselves. So, that is in one way it is a challenge, it is a disaster, everything, but in other way it has also given us an opportunity to update ourselves in terms of pedagogy, in terms of technology, in terms of online platform, in terms of learning, in terms of understanding the students' needs, learners' needs, all these things. So, this is the focus of driver 3, that how to strengthen our educational environment and educational ecosystem with good infrastructure, technology access, everything. So, now these 3 things, the driver 1 has the focus, 2 has this focus and 3 has the. So, when, as we have already discussed, when driver 1 interacts with driver 2, both the drivers, they have to ensure this focus, how to achieve it. Similarly, when the driver 2 and driver 3 they interact, they have to they have to ensure that this focus, this objective is being fulfilled. And when driver 1 and driver 3 interact, so they have to ensure that this objective should be achieved, the goal should be achieved, because without without financial allocation, without policy instruction, implementation or support, any school, any institution cannot establish a good infrastructure setup or the technology access. Okay. So, for that whatever necessary requirements are there. So, these are, you can say, this is the, so all these drivers they reciprocate, they interact properly every time, all the time, 24 into 7, because these are very much interlinked, we can say, driver 1, driver 2, 3. These are the 3 dimensions of education system, and they have to function and operate in a very cohesive manner, in an interactive manner, reciprocal manner. So, that is why then only our sustainable education can be possible, can be achievable. So, what are these? Let us see what are the sustainable education goals. It has been elaborately mentioned in SDG 4, SDG 4, that is there, targets are there. But here in our system, let us focus on what would be our sustainable goals here in our system. First is that is inclusive education. Our government, our policy also says that we have to introduce this inclusive education. Everybody should be, should be learned, should be taught, should be literate, should be educated, and how universal access and all kinds of technical facilities should be provided to them. Inclusive education, yes, one thing, that is the goal of education system, our objectives, inclusive education. Inclusive education with the achievement of these 3, with the achievement of the effective performance, curriculum transaction, assessment, technology, all these things. Second is the effective management. So, when the ecosystem, when it is related to education ecosystem, policy and the human resource, the output that is the product should be, that is the effective management of our education system. Then third is that community development, as education is the public service. So, ultimately it should yield the result to the community, that means the all around the neighborhood, the whole community will be developed. So, we can say the interaction of these 3 drivers, objectives and goals and activities, the outcome is that this one. One is inclusive education in terms of learning outcomes, second is the effective management in terms of the functioning of the system, and third one is the direct benefit of this education system for the community development. So, you can say it is a conceptual sustainable educational triangle. How can we enhance our education system? Now, here conceptual dilemma model. Here conceptual dilemma model, as we have already did, driver 1, driver 2, driver 3, they may be having different kinds of dilemmas, confusions, conflicts, etc. So, even though our focus is on the when driver 1 and driver 2 they interact, they must maintain this quality. So, these overlapping areas, as you can see, that is the quality. The more they are overlap, they draw the consensus, they work together, that commonness, the cohesiveness found, that is it maintains the quality. Similarly, when the driver 2 and driver 3 they overlap, they interact with each other. This area you can see, this is the feasible and this is the possibility of effective interactions, etc. Then again, and when driver 1, driver 3 interact, that is this overlapping area you can see, that means this as it will be larger, the larger the portion will be, the more sustainable system will be, because as they overlap extensively or to a larger extent, so the viability increases. Similarly, here the more they overlap with each other, the feasibility increases. Similarly, the more this driver 1 and driver 2 overlaps, then the quality enhances, quality increases. Okay. So, when for example, it is a dilemma triangle. Dilemma triangle, what could be the possible confusions, conflicts and dilemmas? Let us see driver 1 and driver 2. Okay. So, the driver here in this case, what would be the dilemma? Driver 1 dilemma is that economic, social. The driver is the, because this the economic aspect is social. So, what would be the economic and social dilemma? Yes, first thing is that quality of education. Okay, quality of education, teachers quality, learners educational development. So, these could be the question, these could be the dilemmas, that is common areas to be asked, like what should be the when 1 and 2 they interact with each other. So, how we have to ask, we have to check what is the quality of education, how to ensure the quality of education, what is the standard of education quality. So, teachers quality, how the teachers are being trained, how the teachers are being recruited, how the teachers are being identified, how the teachers are performing, that is another question. And the learners educational development, and to what extent learners are being benefited, like whatever system we have created, whatever finance, curriculum, technology, whatever the economic driver 1 is providing, whatever people are there, driver 2 manpower is there, with their interaction, what is this outcome, what are the possibilities, like what is the quality of education, whether it is at par of the global standard, quality standard or teachers quality, teacher. Then you might have observed in the teacher education, so National Council of NCT, National Council of Teacher Education is there. Teacher education, there the quality, it is then before I think 20 years back, there are an n number of enormous mushrooming B.Ed colleges and training colleges. So, but in order to maintain that quality, teacher quality and quality of education, then NCT has been established, and NCT controls, regulates the teacher quality of teacher recruitment, and it has given the, you can say, the parameters policies for the recruitment, teachers development, in service education, everything. Okay. So, similarly, so these two drivers when they interact, these dilemmas could, or doubts or the challenges or issues can come up, that is the what is the quality of education, teachers quality, and the learners education level, to what extent learners are being benefited, or their behavioral, their cognitive and the emotional developments are taking place. So, here what could be the possible solution, as we have discussed, that is possible solution is inclusive education. Inclusive education includes not only the cognitive, emotional and the behavioral development of the learners, but also it enhances the teacher's quality, teacher student interaction, then the effective learning outcomes in terms of overall personality development of the students, and teachers job satisfaction, their in service training, their updated knowledge, their motivation, everything. So, here the possible solution is that if we can enhance, if we can establish a very good system of inclusive education, where both the teachers, students and other stakeholders are directly or indirectly benefited efficiently, then we can see that, oh, then this is the possible solution, the one part of the sustainable education, one objective can be achieved. Similarly, when the driver 2 and the driver 3, that is the educational ecosystem, environment, ecosystem and the people. You might have observed, just take any example of a school in the rural setup. Okay. So, the rural school in the very remote area. So, just what is the environment, just imagine what is the environment of the rural school in the remote areas, with the infrastructure, with the with the technology access, whatever, then and the regulators, and again the people and the teachers presence, teachers mode of teaching, teachers involvement, engagement. So, what is the quality of education there? Hardly if you find that that means for the namesake the school is there, but hardly they have the sufficient infrastructure, chair, tables or the book materials. So, and the teachers are also they are engaged in some other activities, or partially they are coming to, sometimes there is no regularity, nothing, and then either they are very much interested and students are not coming regularly to the class. So, here that is the reason why the dropout comes in, that is why the students are not being retained after admission, after everything, introducing all kinds of midday meal, books, study materials, uniforms, even if after central government's can say this kind of funding also, this providing this kind of things also, why the students retention is very low, enrollment even though enrollment is there officially, but in physically actually there is students drop out, very less number of students attendance, etc. Why it is happening? Because when these two drivers interface, so there are problems are now, the dilemmas are not being resolved. So, here the social and environmental dilemmas, we can say it is more related to educational environment, administration and the community development. Okay. So, here we can say dilemma like infrastructure, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of quality, in terms of rules and regulation, in terms of people and the environment interactions, like the administrative staff and the teachers and students interactions, all these outcomes if that means it does not give us a very good result, then the feasibility. So, here feasibility, the percentage of the feasibility decreases. So, here the dilemma is, it is more related to educational administration, how the educational ecosystem operates, functions and facilitates for the learning outcomes, and similarly how the people are involved, teachers, students, parents are involved and engaged with an intention to learn. So, here what can we say, that we have to involve here the possible solution could be the goal 3, that is the community development. What is the community development? The more and more the community are being benefited. So, they have to take an active participation in these two systems, they can reciprocate, they can interact with the educational environment, they are in touch with the administration as well as the touch in the teachers, and there is a proper reciprocation. So, we can say that yes, community development takes place as a result of these interactions. Similarly, when the driver 1 and 3, when driver 1 and 3 they interact, there may be the dilemmas like funding for the resources, funding the resources for the infrastructure, for the technology. So, these kind of issues can come up also. So, how to how to sort it out, how to resolve it? The solution, that is the goal 2, that is effective management. So, effective management, both it requires not only the infrastructure, economical financial resources and the proper channelization of the resources in developing the ecosystem or environment with technology access, with the proper equipments, infrastructure, proper environment, cleanliness, to safe drinking water, to everything. Okay. So, that is this here these two, that means when these drivers they interact, there may be dilemmas, but how to resolve it. If you can resolve it, that helps us. So, you can say the sustainable educations, when we talk about the sustainable educations, the 3 resolutions, these 3 resolutions, when we these solutions like the inclusive education, the second solutions like the community development, and the third solution like the effective management. So, these 3 things when we can achieve, that becomes an objectives of sustainable education. Okay. So, this kind of model, that is the holistic, whole school, whole institution approach. This way we can also every principal, every headmaster, every even the head of the department or every principal of a college, they can adopt this model and they can coordinate, reciprocate, so that they can, anybody can establish this model and try to achieve the sustainable education. So, here here according to as because I have also published this this paper in one of the journal, Sustainable Development Journal. So, here Ministry of Human Resource Development, that is the Government of India's Education, Ministry of Education, nowadays it plays a major role as the policy maker, decision maker, economic resource provider, etc. as we have already discussed. Second driver is the people, that means the human resources, they are engaged in the education sector, that means both the direct and indirect stakeholders. Then the school system, that primary school and secondary school level system, school system, education higher, even it can be applied and implemented in higher education system also. So, people, that means students, teachers, then supporting staff, whoever are directly or indirectly related to, even the community people are also stakeholders. And third driver is the environment, educational environment. So, we can say which will be maintained and managed not only by the administrative staff, but also with the proper collaboration of the teachers, mentors, community people, and also the students engagement also. So, then only we can create a sustainable education model in our country. So, these three drivers that we have, whatever we have already discussed, that three drivers, profit, people, actually it is profit, not profit, and we can say prosperity. So, and objectives, these are the things whatever we have already discussed. Driver 2, enhancing the educational human resource competence through training and practices. Similarly, driver objective of the 3 is that strengthening the educational ecosystem through good infrastructure, technology access, and the new challenges to learning are emerging, and the 21st century education must address to this and contribute to the greater humanity in rapidly changing world. This is the UNESCO's goal, and how we can ally it with our goal of the system of education. So, similarly, so education has been education has been consistently has been given the importance since 2005, 2014, all in the at the 14, then that is called the decade of education, sustainable education, decade of education for sustainable development. Again in 2017, UNESCO 17 goals. So, the how it has been continuously emphasized that how constructively and creatively we can address this and for the future global challenges to create a more sustainable and resilient society, because education and health, these are the two primary domains of the social development. So, here you can say education plays a very key role in not only creating awareness, but also educating people, educating people, directing their behavior, creating employment, jobs, all kinds of. So, it plays a very major role in not only bringing the positive changes in the society through economic development, prosperity, etc., but also to make them emotionally effectively resilient, to tolerate, to go through, to come back, to overcome any kind of hurdle or obstructions or the disaster in the environment. So, repeatedly that has to be. So, UNESCO has repeatedly advocated for the sustainable education, especially 4.7, that is ESD, that is education for sustainable development, plays a very key role in achieving and enabling the people to achieve that all the 16 other goals. So, that is why, so here ESD needs to build on the transformative learning. How can we achieve it? Transformative learning requires 360-degree changes for for making the society effective, for bringing the social complete transformation to the society, making the people very resilient, optimist, positive, etc. So, ESD needs to build on the transformative learning. So, it has to be built on the transformative learning pedagogy and explicitly inculcate the critical reflections on the values. So, we have already in transformative learning we have already discussed critical reflection, then creative ideas, innovative ideas, experiential learning. So, this should be the pedagogy. So, at the same time transformative learning should not be used as to regulate, but to empower them. So, here transformative learning is not to impose anything, not to regulate others' behavior, but to bring that transformation, change, voluntary change, and empower the people to be more autonomous, to be more 21st century skilled and competent people, to develop a skilled manpower, to make them self-reliant, self-sustainable, to develop the sustainable habits of mind, sustainable consumption, production, so that not only our present will be very secured and sustainable, but our future resources of our future of our country, of our people, our planet should also be sustainable for future generations. So, here also this is also another this is also a framework given by some researchers like the technical. So, in this transformative learning pedagogy context, what are the important things? One is that the technological, pedagogical content, knowledge, etc., that is one important. Now, in the present situation, of course, technology plays a very vital role. Second thing is content knowledge, discipline, interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary, all kinds of knowledge in microcredit, macrocredit, all kinds of knowledge are important. Third one is the pedagogical knowledge, that how to teach, how to learn, know hows, know whats, know whys, all kinds of things. So, where again, so here or when similarly when these three domains they interact. So, one is the technical pedagogical knowledge, that has to be how technology can be used for the pedagogy, and pedagogy can help effectively use the technology, that is one thing. Similarly, content knowledge, how the content to be delivered in effective pedagogical things. So, pedagogical content knowledge, pedagogy. So, how the pedagogy can help in delivering the content, and how the content can be strategically delivered through different pedagogical techniques. So, pedagogical content knowledge. Third is the technological content knowledge. Here the overlapping here again content knowledge, but with regard to technology, how to use technology effectively for creating, not only creating content, but disseminating for using content. So, these three domains. So, here we can say the core here the core is that the overlapping the core is that technological pedagogical content knowledge. So, here three things: technological knowledge, pedagogical knowledge and content knowledge. So, when they overlap and work together, then in teaching learning context, here you can say technologically pedagogical content knowledge, technological content knowledge, pedagogical content knowledge. So, when the three dimensions they interact, that is called the TPAC, technological technology, pedagogy and pedagogical content and content knowledge. So, this is the again it is in the present day context, online platform, this is the latest model. So, this is the transformative learning we have already discussed. Here transformative learning you can say engage, activate and reflect. So, it is a learning cycle, it goes on. Initially when we are in the dilemma, we are in confusion, so that frustration causes frustration, then it leads to fear to judgment. This is a cycle. So, how to overcome this? Through reflect. Judgment can be removed, can be avoided through curiosity, by reflecting, then generating curiosity to eager to know. Similarly, frustration can be removed through creating excitement and engaging the people. Similarly, fear can also be transformed into courage through activities. Fear can be transformed into the courage. How we can see now these things how it can be transformed completely. The frustration, how frustration can be transferred to the excitement through engagements, how fear can be transformed to courage through activities, and how judgment can be promoted, can be improved, can be transferred to curiosity through reflective thinking. Okay. So, similarly, as you can see, transformative learning is a process of examining, questioning, validating, revising, arguing our perspective, different perspective. This is the Bloom's this is the Kolb's model that we have already discussed. Concrete experience, that what happened actually after when we experience particular event, situation, context. We explain after receiving the concrete experiences, then we analyze what happened actually, then we reflect on it, observe it. Okay. So, then through this, after observation, reflective analysis, then we try to find out what did we observe, we experience actually. Then on the basis of that, we formulate the abstract conceptualization, why it happens, why all kinds of the conceptual analysis, like why it happens, why did this happen to me, why this, what is the, why did it happen, what are the causes, what are the effects, then we abstract conceptualization, then we frame some hypotheses and assumptions. And in order to examine it, whether it is valid or not, then we try to actively experiment on this, what will I do. If this is the cause, that these are the things, then I have to experiment on it, whether it is justifies, it is strategic, it is effective or not, that we can explore, that we can find out after examining, experimenting the assumptions, our assumptions and the hypothesis. So, if we found that it is this much is productive, this much is beneficial, then that much only will continue with us. So, it will be embedded in our learning system. Okay. So, this is the kind of transformative learning framework that we can go through, and it is very much required for the sustainable education. So, transformative learning, you can say transformative learning, these are the things: efficacy, creativity, mobility, collaboration, differentiation. These are the integration of the model. So, these are the how the vision, leadership and community, how it can be transformative learning can be embedded not only in the school education, but in the leadership training, in the corporate training, everything, everywhere. So, starting from the differentiation, when we can identify what are the differences, then we go for the collaboration, from the collaboration to mobility, to creativity, to efficacy, then efficiency, then comes the transformative learning model. Okay. So, from the old things, so we have discussed about the Mejiro's theory, how the Mejiro's theory of transformative learning, how these new things happens, latest things happens, from the old things, old ways, to how to from the old things in a new way, then the new things in the new way. How transformation takes place stepwise, 10 steps we have already discussed in the Mejiro's learning theory. The same thing happens here. So, now I am concluding this chapter, this chapter on sustainable education, that how all of us we can try to adopt the sustainability and sustainable education ESD in our environment, in our institutions, in our organizations. So, higher education definitely plays an important role in promoting the development and developing the policies and principles and practices. Of course, it also requires sustainability to be introduced to the leaderships, to the it should be incorporated in the sustainable practices in teacher training, in pedagogy, and in pedagogy in both at the local level, at the regional level, and how community can be involved in this sustainable development process. Not only in education, because from education we can also expand it, we can also apply it in other domains, like we can apply it in our lifestyle, we can apply it in our entrepreneurship, we can apply it in our business situation, we can apply it in our social setup, social activities. So, everywhere this sustainability model so we can apply it in our different dimensional spheres of life. So, let us begin with the sustainable education model, then from there onwards we will learn how to lead a sustainable lifestyle, how to develop sustainable planet, how to even use and consume the things in a very sustainable way, how to produce sustainably without exploiting the environmental resources, or without exploiting the people, or without destroying resources. So, with minimum resource depletion, with the sustainable habits of mind, sustainable consumption style, then definitely we can proceed towards a sustainable future, because our target is how to conserve the resources and how to protect our planet for the sustainable future, so that we can live longer, our future generation can also maintain a quality life in future also. So, that is our goal. Ultimately, what is that what is the ultimate goal of this ESD and SDGs and sustainable education is that? Yes, of course, ultimately the goal is that community well-being. Ultimately, we want to protect our planet, so that we can live happily, live together, live cohesively, and live comfortably. Okay. So, that is the you can say that the ultimate goal is the community well-being. Community well-being not just within the country, but global community, we can say global well-being, So, global well-being, when we are happy, we are healthy, we are sustainable, and we have enough of resources, we are reciprocating each other very effectively, we have very good positive interpersonal relationship, healthy relationship, and our whatever social changes are taking place are also very positive, then definitely we can proceed towards a sustainable future, not just in India, but across the globe. So, that is the whole purpose or objective of launching this course. Okay. Thank you very much. I think you can also better explore more opportunities in our day to day habits. So, we need to have a paradigm shift towards the sustainability. Nobody is going to observe us, monitor us, regulate us, but we should ourselves regulate us, or evaluate ourselves through critical thinking, whatever I am doing, whether it is sustainable or not. So, gradually through a habit we can change our mindset, and then we automatically the mindset can change our behavior and habits. So, habit is the second nature. Similarly, we can proceed towards a sustainable future, not just not by the target given by the UNESCO, that is the 2030, but much before that 2030, by this 2022, by 25 we can achieve a sustainable lifestyle, consumption style, and sustainable education platform for our students, for our stakeholders, for our community. I have also given some links, you can also go through it. Thank you very much.